There seems to be 6 common themes for the Chicago White Sox this offseason. Let's discuss what they are on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, James Fegan of SoxMachine.com has noticed that the White Sox seem to be doing 4 interesting things this offseason, and I would add 2 more that I want to discuss in the first segment. Then the Sox added Bobby Dalbec. So let's discuss what he brings to the table and if he can make the big league roster out of spring training. And finally, it's a way back Wednesday, and I want to make the case for Ozzie Guillen having his number 13 retired. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Well, shout out to James Fegan, the SoxMachine.com's White Sox baseball beat reporter. Would love to get him on the show someday, but he kind of has noticed 4 interesting things happening this offseason at 35th and Shields, and I would say semantically it's more like 4 trends, and I'd like to add 2 more. But first, what do these trends even mean? Well, it first means GM Chris Getz might be, he's doing the easy part and ripping this team down to the studs. Something, we did live through 9 years ago under the previous management. And he's also, though, here's the thing. He's going to be shaping the White Sox front office to be a modern front office, where 9 years ago, there were still the seeds of operating a decade back. There were still seeds for the potential dysfunction when you had Kenny Williams kicking himself upstairs and then eventually returning when he started to see the team be competitive. And then you had that dysfunction with Kenny and Rick. You at least won't have it this go around because we know Chris Getz is in charge. You just have to worry about the meddling of the shadow GM, Tony La Russa, and the limited financial resources he will always be given from Jerry Reinsdorf. And it also means Getz is doing 2 things correctly when I go over these 6 trends. And yeah, I got to give Getz his flowers when it comes to James's 4th observation that we'll get to in a little bit. Also, it shows me signs that there is actually better process when it comes to roster construction, at least during a rebuild, and potentially gives you hope that maybe this roster can be constructed correctly year after year. Again, you have every right to be skeptical of Chris Getz. You have every right to be skeptical because Jerry Reinsdorf is one of the most frugal owners in baseball. And obviously these moves are nothing thrilling because the White Sox are still trending to be a 100-loss team. And then one of the observations shows that, the improvement of the franchise actually had to happen in the front office first before it can ever happen on the field. And that's the other reason why this offseason, you could be like, man, shouldn't they have done something more than just sign Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater and Josh Rojas after losing a record number of games? Yeah, but even if you would have signed a big name player, it would still be a rotten, gorged out franchise that was operating behind the times. So this the front office had to get better before we can even think of the White Sox getting better. And we don't know if all these changes will, point the White Sox in the best, get the White Sox to actually be competitive on the field, but at least it's going to give them a better shot than, basically doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So in terms of the trends that James is seeing, number 1, this is what he wrote on a piece a couple of days ago. Number 1, trading or trying to trade their best players. 2, hiring well-reviewed coaches and baseball operations staffers from other orgs who say they believe in Chris Getz's vision or something similar. 3, vigorously mining the market of free agents interested in signing 1-year deals or less than $2 million. 4, adding veteran relievers at low cost to be potential trade deadline assets. And then my addition to this list would be 5, adding players with ties to assistant GM Josh Barfield. And then 6, acquiring hitters that at least have on-base percentages over 300. They're getting guys who get on base. And yes, I know I sound like a broken record with the on-base thing. I know it's a theme. You can almost play the drinking game with that too, and how much I, talk about like the Milwaukee Brewers too. But It's just, I want to emphasize that going to this simple concept is going to give you a better chance to construct maybe a roster that could at least win 50 to 60 games. And considering we're coming off a record losing season where the White Sox just won 41 games, you want to maybe be more hopeful then that even though these minor signings are very minor and they're nothing to, write home about, they're nothing to throw a poster up on the wall. At least it gives you a chance to maybe score 585 runs. And I talked about it yesterday. That's what the Oakland A's did in 2023. They won 50 games, scored 585 runs. And you got to give yourself more opportunities to score runs. So I went over that, I believe, it was Monday's show or Tuesday's show. I went over that. Anyways, let's first tackle trying to trade away their best players. I know it's not fun to watch. I know it's not fun to read about, especially in the fan sense. I'm getting tired of watching the players that the team actually develops just trade them away because this team is so poor at drafting hitters and developing them, and the owner won't pay pitchers that they do actually draft and develop, that you have to trade them away. I mean, frankly, losing Garrett Crochet sucks, to put it bluntly. It sucks. But it had to happen from a logistical standpoint, as the team at least did add 4 prospects, all of whom can not only make the big league roster, but 2 of them can be cornerstone players. So at least you've got yourself now moving a little bit up. Now you can start to see a little bit of a ray of light. Kyle Teal's floor is at least a top 10 catcher in the big leagues. And that's what I keep reading and hearing. Even when you watch his highlights, he should be a very good Major League Baseball player. Could be an all-star. Braden Montgomery has all the upside and has all the tools to be the next great hitting star of the Chicago White Sox. They got a guy with a high ceiling. Finally, you got it would have been great if they drafted him, but then he broke his ankle. So obviously, and they had to hit on the number 5 pick. So going safe with Hagen Smith is fine, but getting another shot to get Braden Montgomery, that is at least a nice consolation for trading Garrett Crochet. Chase Mydroth could finally solve the Sox' eternal problem at second base. At the very least, he could be Larry Garcia before Tony La Russa, shoved him down our throat. And for some reason, the White Sox paid him a bunch of money. Literally the guy got rewarded for hitting one of the biggest home runs in White Sox history. And it was great that he hit that home run in Game 3 of the 2021 ALDS. But I would have never have paid him that amount of money. You just never pay a super sub $12 million. You just don't. You let those guys walk. They live on 1-year deals. And the White Sox not only signed him back for a 1-year deal, they gave him 3 more. And then Tony La Russa was like, this guy's got to play every day. Wickleman Gonzalez, he could be a viable bullpen arm. But at least it gives the franchise a legit shot that things could get back to being at least mediocre by 2027 instead of who knows when. The next best player obviously likely to go is Luis Robert Jr., and I've talked about that extensively. I've talked about the subject a lot lately. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I get people that have brought up the comments in the YouTube community page that, shouldn't this rebuild have at least a good player or 2 on the roster, much like Jose Abreu, maybe already have a cornerstone player on the roster? Well, here's the difference. Jose Abreu was, first of all, usually in the lineup every day, and he was under club control when the team was probably likely to be ready to compete. When the White Sox are ready to compete, the soonest might be is 2027. Let's face it. I mean, maybe 2026 if you stretch it. But I doubt it's going to be 2026. You're looking at probably 2027 because you need to still add a lot of pieces. Luis Robert Jr. is going to free agency after the 2027 season. And he's possibly going to free agency next offseason if he suffers a major injury again and the Sox have to, buy him out. But he's represented by Scott Boras. He's not signing another extension. It's just not happening. Scott Boras takes his guys to free agency. So you don't have the luxury like you had with Abreu if the team is ready to compete by as soon as 2027. If Abreu was still in the same type of boat, like say he was only, say he was going to be a free agent after the 2019 season, I bet you he would have been traded. Okay, I know, blasphemy, but I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why Luis Robert Jr. has to go. And there is the risk of he suffers an injury and you're going to lose him then for nothing because you have an out after the season. The only thing is I've always advocated too is this trend should have been last off season, but they only traded Dylan Cease. because again, there was still this belief that, well, we got to turn things around quickly. We can still keep Yoan Moncada and Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert Jr. together as our cornerstone, and maybe we can still be competitive. When that was false, because those three have never, only Luis Robert Jr., showed in 2023, that was his first healthy year. Yoan Moncada, outside of his, he had 2 seasons where he proved he was healthy. Otherwise, he was never dependable, and Eloy was never dependable. It was so false. Those guys should have been dealt last off season to maximize even some of their value. And the only player that should have been dealt this offseason, obviously, would have been Crochet, because he just came out of nowhere. Nobody thought he was going to be an ace pitcher. I thought at the very least maybe he might be your number 4 starter. So that. And that's the other frustrating thing about the horrific 2024 season, was just the time was wasted because the owner's foolhardy attempt to think things could be turned around quickly when this roster should have been ripped down to the studs 2023, last off season. Anyways, it's 2025. Got to remove the trauma from the 2024 season. Obviously never forget, but just got to move forward here. When it comes to the leadership recruitment, you hope someday Chris Getz can actually recruit a star player like he can recruit leaders. He got Will Venable. That's a huge score to become the manager. Adam Fuller to be the director of hitting is I think a home run hire. And getting Walker McKinven to be the bench coach, that's also great. And they have cited Getz's vision as why these 3 competent and respected baseball people are coming to this dumpster fire of an organization. Happy to have them. And that is also where the improvement had to start. It had to start in the front office. It had to start in the manager's office. Yes, you obviously wanted more flashy signings. I advocated for Willy Adames and Anthony Santander to headline this offseason, but it wasn't going to happen because in a lot of ways you had to get a modern day front office. There was so much work that had to be done in terms of getting the research and development up to date. Well, data and analytics, but Jerry likes to be called research and, development. They were just operating like 20 years behind. It was well documented that they were still operating like it was 2005, and baseball moved well past that. Your leadoff hitter now needs to be the guy, well, for example, your second hitter no longer should be another speed guy. Your second hitter is your best hitter. Okay. That, because you want him to get as many at bats. Baseball's has accepted that there's nothing wrong with starting off 2-0 instead of 3-0, for example. But it's imperative that these updates in the front office and in the manager's office are there for this for this franchise to be competent in the long run. They had to make these updates. You had to get forward-thinking people in the organization, creative thinking people, smart people. And I think they've done that. Now, you have every right to not have faith in Chris Getz. I'm not telling you to have that. And mine is still at neutral, but still, you should have some standards that now, for example, the White Sox now have a concept that they're going to play baseball the same way that they play at the complex league all the way to the big leagues. And that is what good organizations have. That's why having a director of hitting in Fuller or a director of pitching in Brian Bannister, even though that's not his official title, is so key. Although I'd love for them to add a pitching of fielding or director of fielding too. That'd be great. But the international scouting department was just not finding big league players anymore. It had to be revamped. And getting guys that are teachers like Walker McKinven, although he mostly teaches catchers, but still getting teachers into this organization to help develop players, because the player development was so far behind, is just something that had to be done this offseason. The mining for players, signing 1-year deals for under $2 million. Obviously, it's not fun to see, especially coming off this 2024 season, but at least it's better than, hey, let's get clubhouse guys who can play defense. Also, you're not tying and anchoring yourself down to players that could potentially get older and bad really, really quick. You do get some financial flexibility. You just got to hope that CHSN gets on Comcast, because I have a feeling that ownership is going to use that as a crutch for why they can't spend. Well, we just don't have the revenue anymore from our RSN deals. But still, I'd like that, they've been mining that market just to give themselves flexibility. And that's kind of what you do when you've bottomed out and you're trying to at least get back to even being a 50 to 65 win organization. I've seen it happen. And again, getting guys that get on base is at least something. It's better than let's play defense and forget how to score runs. You're getting Mike Tauchman and Austin Slater, high OPP guys, and they can catch the ball in the outfield. I would still prefer that the Sox, at least if they have to pay more than $2 million for a player, I'd like it to, yes, be on a starting pitcher like Jacob Junis or Jose Quintana or Andrew Haney or even Johnny Cueto coming back. I would prefer that they still spend a little bit of money to fill out the rotation, because I just think it would be better to have Bryce Wilson in the bullpen. But in Brian Bannister, I guess I'm going to have to trust. And then obviously there's nothing wrong with finding relief pitchers off the scrap heap. Totally fine with that. After seeing the 2024 trade deadline being very kind to the bullpen market and last decade's rebuild fail because the limited money ownership allowed to be spent was spent on bullpen arms instead of second base and right field, this is the best option to go. Buy low, sell high, accept that bullpen arms are volatile stocks. And nothing wrong with, seeing if Bannister can find something to tweak, or even Ethan Katz. Even Ethan Katz can, sometimes help a pitcher get better. It has happened. Just have to have a quick hook this time if these pitchers continue to be bad. Don't take too long to DFA someone, like how long it took to DFA, Tim Hill, who clearly did not want to be here. And finally, we've seen the last couple of transactions have ties to assistant GM Josh Barfield, the former director of player development of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who actually did develop talent. So I'd rather go with that route than say, hey, let's get players that Pedro Grifol likes. That should never have been the driver of acquiring players off the scrap heap or just driving players to construct your rosters. Hey, let's get players that Pedro Grifol likes. No, you had Josh Barfield. You should have been, going with Josh Barfield's Rolodex last year. He's an adult in the room. Pedro was not. Pedro was all about flushing things down a toilet. Anyways, speaking of adding players, the White Sox signed Bobby Dalbec to a minor league deal with an invite to camp. Let's discuss the Sox finally adding some true power in the offseason next on Locked On White Sox. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? I'm sure I've got some subscriptions I'm still paying for, so I have to check out Rocket Money. Plus, it sounds like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings you everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. And I know my wife, she's stressing about the budget, and the bills from Christmas are coming due soon. So I got to check out Rocket Money and see how they can help me save some cash. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So obviously there's no such thing as a bad one-year contract unless it's given to, say, Trevor Bauer, Mike Clevenger, Addison Russell, Julio Urias. You don't want those headaches on your roster. And you don't want their allegations of domestic violence in the past or the PR nightmares that come with it, especially Trevor Bauer being reportedly considered the worst teammate ever. You never want to sign him to a one-year deal because, again, he's reportedly considered to be one of the worst teammates ever. Sorry, Trevor Bros. Pick another team to think, hey, they could use him because he's the answer, because he can pitch well. He's not coming to the White Sox. Stop putting these in the YouTube community page. I feel like I have to say that at least once a week because there's one guy that's always going to pop up. I saw somebody say, like, well, about Julio Urias, his core problems are probably going to be behind him. No, you don't want. You can sign a guy who's a jerk as long as he keeps to himself. AJ Pierzynski, teammates said you hated him when he was on the other team and you hated him less when he was on your team, but he kind of kept to himself. And I've been in clubhouses where there's guys that jerks, but they usually keep to themselves. Trevor Bauer was a horrible teammate from the reports. The Dodgers couldn't wait to get him to get the heck up out of here. So that's kind of my PSA for today. Because I'm going to go over the White Sox signing Bobby Dalbec, and obviously he doesn't seem to be a bad guy, but it goes back to, when I go over his numbers and you're like, again, another minor signing, there's nothing wrong with a 1-year minor league deal signing. There's just never anything wrong with that, especially where the White Sox are at. That's why I'm fine with signing Bobby Dalbec. Gets a minor league deal with the Sox, an invite to camp. I believe MLB trade rumors had it that he'll get like $1.25 million, I believe, if he does make the big league roster. But he can bring some serious power to the team. Although you have to go back to 2021 and 2022 to find it. That's when Bobby hit a combined 37 dingers, including a career-high 25 in 2021. He had a .494 slugging percentage that season with a WRC plus of 106. Otherwise, he's hit 8 home runs. He hit 8 home runs in 2020 in 23 games, and then he's just hit 2 the past 2 seasons. Although one of them was to right field off of Nick Nastrini in 2024 for his only dinger of the season. Yes, he did hit that at the right field. He actually pulled it to right too. But hey, he's a first baseman who can also play third if needed. But man, has he been in a big time struggle since the 2022 season ended. He had a 133, 217, 193 slash line with a 16 OPS plus in 2024. He was so bad that he just got completely outrighted off the roster and sent to the minors. And he's going to strike out a lot. I mean, a lot. He's got a career 36.8% K percentage. But with what he produced, I can see, again, why the White Sox are seeing maybe we can find something with our new director of hitting, Adam Fuller. Maybe we can figure something else out. But you got to wonder, what the heck happened to his power? His average exit velocities from 2021 to 2023 were in the 90s. Shout out to CHGO White Sox podcast host Sean Anderson for finding that. You go look at 2024, it was at 86 miles per hour. He had a 57.1% hard hit percentage in 2023, dropped all the way to 36.6% in 2024. He had a great barrel percentage, 20.2% in 2021. So you got to wonder, what the heck happened to this guy? And you got to also, though, wonder a little bit, why are you signing this guy when he's going to be 30 in June and he plays first and third? Because those are prime spots to rotate Brian Ramos and Miguel Vargas make sure that they're getting at bats. You can rotate them at third, first, not short, a DH, kind of like that. Wouldn't you want to give those guys who are a lot younger and still have upside, more at bats? But if you can figure out what the heck happened to his power and regain it, he provides some sorely, desperately needed instant offense, because this lineup is lacking a little bit of pop right now. And also, this is a buy low type of player. And if it somehow works, and I know it rarely does for this franchise, you still actually have club control with him. And plus he can hit lefties with a career 798 OPS. So if you're just asking him to be a power bat off the bench in the interim, it can't hurt to try him over, say, Gavin Sheets. And maybe, again, Adam Fuller watched a bunch of him when when Fuller was with the Orioles as their hitting coach and Dalbec was with Boston, and thinks maybe there's still something that could be there. I wonder if that was the suggestion or the recommendation. Hopefully they ran it by Fuller. But it was just weird to see his power decline so quickly, especially since he can hit in the minors. This was the write-up that they had in MLB trade rumors. He had 956 AAA plate appearances over the past 3 years with 58 home runs. Though he had a 34.6% strikeout rate in that sample, he also had an 11.8% walk rate, a combined batting line of 260, 358, 523, and 121 WRC plus. So definitely fits the mold of a 4A player. You just got to figure out what is going on. And NESN had this quote from Dalbec's former teammate Willie Middlebrooks that might kind of point to what's going on. This is what Will Middlebrooks said. Quote, "It's frustrating in the fact that not only has he done it at AAA and shown he can do it here, but he also has done it in the big leagues. It's frustrating, but at some point it becomes a mental thing where I guarantee if he gets called back up to the big leagues, he's like, bleep, here we go again. You're mentally beating yourself up instead of taking the approach of, you know what? The same way I feel in AAA, the same approach, the same way going about my work in the cage and batting practice, and bring all those things to the big leagues. Then you get to the big leagues and you think you have to do things differently, and you don't, especially for guys like him. He's a really smart guy, and I think sometimes that can really hurt you as a hitter because you just overthink and overthink and overthink, especially when you're a guy like him who can do it, But at the big league level, the results haven't been there at all. He's a thinker in a lot of the aspects of life, and that's great. But as a hitter, it's not, end quote. So if it's mental, I have one suggestion. And if this somehow gets to Bobby Dalbec, that'd be great. So Bobby, if it is mental, or to the coaching staff, this is what you got to tell Bobby. Just want you to go to the plate, look for your pitch, and drive it. Swing as hard as you freaking can. That's all I want you to do. What is your pitch that you want to drive? Let's figure out, the pitches that you can hit. Because if you look at his baseball savant, one year he can hit breaking balls, but he can't hit fastballs. One year he can hit fastballs, but he can't hit breaking balls. One year he hits off speed, but he can't hit breaking balls and fastballs. So let's stick to what is your pitch. And obviously, it might not be there, but there's always going to be a mistake. And also, how can you identify a mistake? So what's your pitch and how can you identify the mistake? And when you see it, swing as hard as you can. Okay, that's it. If you strike out, fine. All I care about is you getting back to hitting home runs. Hit bombs, my young man. Hit bombs, man. Just go to the plate with that approach. Just launch it or nothing. I just want him to hit home runs. That's all I would say to him. That's all I care. Find the mistake and crush it. Or what's your pitch that you can drive? Otherwise, you strike out, you strike out. Because all I'm expecting you to do is hit home runs. Just hit bombs. And I will make the exception of, the other way, where I said with Miguel Vargas, okay, find the off-speed stuff to hit. And if you can't, just foul off every single pitch that you can until you get 4 balls and get on base. In Dalbec's case, I just want you to hit home runs. Or if you strike out, okay, just don't strike out with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth. Okay. Well, this legendary White Sox figure was never known for his power, but he was a heck of a player and is the biggest personality this franchise has ever had. Oh, Ozzie Guillen also happens to be the only living person to manage a team to a World Series win. And his number 19, his number 13, still not retired. I'll make the case for why it should be, and not just because he was the World Series winning manager on today's Way Back Wednesday segment. And that's next on Locked On White Sox. Love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And one of my favorite memories recently was taking my daughter to the Brewers and Sox game. She loved eating ice cream. She loves the Dippin' Dots. Going to the kids' areas, she loved that. And she loved the baseball. Okay, well, she mostly loved the Dippin' Dots and the kids' area, but it was fun to spend a day at the ballpark with my little girl. And if you love going to live events, I recommend using the Gametime app. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with new features, with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I'm always checking out the Gametime app for deals to my beloved Marquette hoops. Tried to convince my wife, could I go to yesterday's game against Georgetown? There was tickets as low as $1. Couldn't convince her, even if I was as low as $1. I guess it was, it's a school night, so I couldn't go. But I'm always monitoring, trying to find the best deals because I had to give up my season tickets a decade ago, and I still love going to Marquette basketball games. And that's why I'm always checking out the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. Appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Love the community that we're growing on the YouTube page at Locked On White Sox. Please make sure to subscribe. We're 30 or 29 or 28 subscribers away from 2,200. So let's build that number up. Let's get this number up. Let's get the number to like 3,000 by the end of the year. That would be tremendous. But I really appreciate that. Also recommend to your fellow Sox fans or even baseball fan friends to subscribe to wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And feel free to leave a 5-star review. That'll help get our rating up and help get us identified more. I believe I'm at 5.4. And you get those haters, like those people that are just like, I gotta leave a bad review. Why? If you don't like something, okay, just don't listen to it. And don't be hating. And I made some mistakes in the beginning, but I think I'm getting better every day. I get the feedback. Now that there is this thing called you can love and hate. You can still hate listen to somebody. Happens. Okay. That's my PSA again. Well, the other team that Jerry Reinsdorf owns, the Chicago Bulls, are retiring Derrick Rose's number 1 next year. And I know there's some boomers and Gen Xers and even older millennials like myself who think that could be a stretch. Yes. Just give me a second. Don't at me, Gen Zers. Don't at me. I'll give you my logic in just one second. Because look, I think Derrick Rose got off to one of the greatest starts to an NBA career in history. I mean, he was amazing. I love Derrick Rose. Yes, I'm a Bucks fan now, but I was also a Derrick Rose fan. I just come down on if you're retiring D Rose, and it's not because we don't want to take away the honor. I mean, Jerry Reinsdorf owned teams. I mean, look at how many numbers the White Sox have retired. Not saying that it's not a diss because I'm going to make the case for a player. It's just that Jerry knows that it's a great way to draw in a crowd to have a number retirement day, and Jerry knows that he's even though that guys have left on bad terms like Frank Thomas and Carlton Fisk, Jerry knows that those guys made him a lot of money. So he'll give him the honor. And Derrick Rose made Jerry Reinsdorf a lot of money. But my thing is, if you're going to go based on, again, the superstar value, the generational, love that, because Gen Zers just love Derrick Rose. And rightfully so. He was their actually first big star. And even younger millennials. He was their first true superstar for the Chicago Bulls. Whereas me, I grew up with Michael Jordan. I was blessed to grow up with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So I'm not going to come from that's the standard of who should be in the rafters and Love and Jerry Sloan. They were the first true superstars of the franchise. Those are the guys. No, I'm going to go with if you're going with the value, if you're going with how they drew people in, you got to also then put Storm and Norman Van Leer's number in the rafters, okay? Because he did a lot for that franchise before Michael Jordan showed up. And he also did a lot while Jordan was there because he was my generation's Ozzie Guillen. I mean, you watched that postgame show, and he was awesome. That's how he drew me in. You had Norm Van Leer and Johnny Redkirk and that type of stuff. So that's all I'm saying. And he was also a great team ambassador, and he was a very accomplished player. Now, another player who has earned the honor on Jerry's other team that should have his number retired, and I don't know why, is Ozzie Guillen. Yes, I know he's had his controversies, but he's made up for them. He's made amends. He's definitely a better person than he was, during that whole Jay Mariotti stuff. He's made amends for that. He's a good, I believe he's become a better person and a better version of himself. And since this is Way Back Wednesday, and, it's a Sox show, I wanted to make the case on today's Way Back Wednesday of why Ozzie Guillen should have his number 13 retired. I think people also forget just how great of a shortstop he was. He played 13 years on the South Side as their shortstop. He won Rookie of the Year in 1985. And you could make a case that for a while, he was the second best shortstop in baseball from 85 to 90. Because he made 3 All-Stars. It was usually the shortstop in the AL. The starting shortstop was always going to be Cal Ripken. And for a while, it was going to be Ozzie Guillen as his backup. And here's what I wrote on Southside Showdown to make the argument. Only 5 other White Sox players have won the honor, including Louis Aparicio, whose number 11 has been retired by the Sox. Guillen also made 3 All-Star appearances and won a Gold Glove in 1990. He was the leader of the 1993 AL West Championship team, while Thomas and pitcher Jack McDowell got all the awards. I mean, remember, Ozzie Guillen was that leader, where Frank Thomas was the MVP and Jack McDowell was the Cy Young. The guy that led that team in the clubhouse and even played hard on the field was Ozzie Guillen. Back to what I wrote. His 1,608 hits while with the Sox ranked 7th in franchise history. That puts him ahead of Aparicio and Minnie Minoso, whose number 9 is retired by the Sox. Only Luke Appling has more hits as a shortstop with the Sox, and Appling's number 4 is retired. Guillen ranks 6th in franchise history in games played. Hall of Fame catcher Roy Schulk is the only player ahead of Guillen in that category who does not have his number retired. Otherwise, Appling, Paul Konerko, Nellie Fox, and Thomas all have the honor. And it's not like the White Sox have reserved this honor for players who have not made the Hall of Fame, who are not in the Hall of Fame. Pitchers Billy Pierce and Mark Burley have their numbers retired, as does Paul Konerko. So you've got 3 guys that have never made the Hall of Fame that have their number retired. Then, in terms of his manager accomplishments, he's 3rd all-time in wins. Only Fielder Jones and Pants Rowland got to go down the road of Pants Rowland have won a World Series as a Sox manager. Kid Gleason and Al Lopez are the only other managers to get the Sox to a World Series, and Lopez is in the Hall of Fame. Ozzie has way more play, and so that's what I wrote. for my argument. So go to the SouthsideShowdown.com. You can check it out. Back to me just commentating. Ozzie has more playoff wins as a Sox manager than Hall of Fame manager Tony La Russa. Again, keyword as the Sox manager. And also, I wonder when the Sox will retire Tony's number. That's probably going to be coming soon. He's still tremendously involved in the organization. He's actually been a great advocate for White Sox baseball, even though he usually does criticize the team on his postgame show. He's one of the few reasons to watch White Sox baseball because he's great on the pre and post. But, look at the accomplishments he did as a player. Look at the contributions he made to the franchise as a player and a manager. And it's obviously the 20th anniversary of the 2005 World Series. So you can obviously draw fans in with the 2005 World Series day. That's going to probably happen. But you can also draw fans in for a day with Ozzie Guillen Day and retires number 13. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the White Sox are going to win the World Series by 2033. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the 6 common trends this offseason, Bobby Dalbec getting signed, and Ozzie Guillen's case to have his number retired. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub or at Locked On White Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.